good afternoon, good evening all, it's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, aboxwithnolid. A channel I've created not only to just bring awareness to the day-to-day realities trauma creates, but I really want to delve into the understandings needed to heal. Now this is the next video in the adoption series. And I want to start to push forward a little more into breaking down all the different facets of what we need to be able to start to see how we can create a space to heal. And one of the biggest complexities within an adoptee's healing journey is the tug of war we have between our attachment and our identity. As I said in previous videos, our identity revolves around these two people. The person biologically we were born to be, all the epigenetics and all this stuff that we've inherited from our biological family, and the person that we had to become to be part of and to fit in to our adoptive family and their ecology. We need to meld these two together. And to heal that attachment, the mere process of having two separate families that we need to negotiate with comes around the complexities of what those families are. Now, most adoptees, we're forced at different stages to choose. We either choose to emulate and be part of our adoptive family, or we choose to get kicked out of, or however we get that to a state that it's in, and we try to connect to our biological family. Both have massive pitfalls and risks and benefits. But again, how do we learn who we are? Who are we? Where is our identity in all of this? When we're reliant upon these two understandings of these two separate family structures to make sense of what and who we are. How much of our adoptive family, their mannerisms, their internal belief structures, the way that what they're interested in and what they're attracted to, how much does that correlate with our epigenetic inheritance from our biological family of their belief systems and their structures and their personalities and their mannerisms and so forth to define who we are? Children mimic the adults growing up. That mimicking is a survival response when it's in a non-biological family. Again, another component of how do we make sense of our identity when so much of it is in what I need to do to get you to acknowledge me as being part of in a non-biological sense. And this impossible mess is what is asked of us when we start to try to make sense of things to heal. When we try to start to make sense of why our friendships and relationships go down the paths they do, and why we have to keep so much to ourselves, and why we have the way we withdraw and the way we, people interpret that we're cold or we shut down. It's not. It's that we don't have the ability to make sense of, so we don't know what to do. We're in this state of trying to work it out, and we need the input to be able to, and we're not getting that input because we're trying to define who we are. Our identity is not our job. It is not our title. It's not any of the crap this Western world throws at us. That's what our identity is. Our identity is the person that we have created out of everything that we are. Our identity is how we've brought all the components of our epigenetic inheritance, all the stuff we've brought in from the generations that have gone before us, into our personality, our expressions, and how we develop our problem-solving interactions and all the things we do. The ecology that we are is our identity. And for an adoptee, that is a really hard thing to get your head around because, as I said before, so much of it is tied up in the views and opinions of others. And we're hardwired to have those views and opinions of others become what we need to do. So we wait for them. How do we find the balance that actually supports us? Like I said in the previous video, we need to constantly create that and feed that little moment of sanctuary to where we bring in and go, what have I learned to support me? What have I learned to support my healing? What steps have I taken? Or what information have I gleaned? Have I experienced or learned to answer those questions? How have I can take this step that little bit further each day? That is how the only way I can think of and I've seen work in the processes of building the skill sets to be able to titrate between the two people that we are on the path to bringing them into one. And as I've said, it always comes down to the difficulty we have because so much of who we are is tied up in those around us. It's not in here like in biological people raised in biological families. When epigenetics meets up and has those connections with biological members, you make sense of what you're attracted to and why you have these responses, these interests, mannerisms and facial expressions and so forth and so forth. Why your nervous system and your immune system responds in a certain way, because we've inherited all this stuff biologically. All that plays a huge part in your identity. When you're an adoptee, you're raised in a family that your epigenetics and their epigenetics are completely different. And that gets stalled, and that creates so many blocks on integrating all those key fundamentals of understanding who we are inside. That's why it creates identity versus attachment, or identity versus that belonging. With how do we fit this together? I'm trying to find a way to explain it clearly enough, which will be taken on by adoptees, because I know this stuff gets a little triggery. Because we do hate constantly being reminded that we're different. I don't like doing it, but it's the only way I can explain this stuff. But we are hardwired to look externally to find answers, not internally. Because internally, we cannot answer these questions without engaging externally. Because we need answers from why the hell our mother didn't come and get us. Why are we raised with people that are not biologically our own? And what do we need to make ourselves safe, belong, and be part of the family that's not biologically our own? That's why we're hardwired to look externally for these answers. When your identity and attachment, you need to look internally to find them. And that's why I said in the other video was that moment of sanctuary is so important. I know, and I've observed it so often with adoptees, this external looking creates all these reasons to support having a survival attachment state. There are so many facets of our life that just become no-go areas emotionally. But as the older we get, and that void that sits in the core of our being from the despair that our mother didn't come and pick us up, hold us, and take us home, grows and takes over more and more of our life because there's less and less distractions. So we are going to have to hit a point in our life where we are going to need to start to look at this stuff and actually honestly answering it. It's also why when you look in the world of foster care and adoption, self-medication is so prevalent, especially the older you get, because that's a coping mechanism. That's a way of trying to avoid answering the impossible, because it is impossible to answer. We didn't create this mess. It is placed upon us to live with it. And what I want to try to do with this channel is to step out the different ledges and different parts that you can at least make some headway, and each step closer is a step out of that depth of that whole well of despair. The older we get, our relationships become more important to us. We place more importance on the relationships that are closest to us. We are wired to look externally for the answers that we really need to look internally. To find and appease the battle between attachment and identity, we need to have these understandings of how we're wired to find the answers. And to do that, we need to have the courage to sit by ourselves a little moment each day and understand the questions that we're seeking to answer, understand the questions that we don't want to go near, and start answering them. And what have we learned this day that helps that? You know, as I said, I use TV shows as a way of watching, observing certain characters and interactions to gauge what I've learned that day through other real life interactions. There are ways we can develop skill sets to ask and answer the questions in a way that provides a productive format, where we're not continually having to rely upon the belief systems of those that have a direct role in our lives, our adoptive family and our biological, whether we have contact with them or not. They're still there because their epigenetics are within us. I cannot stress having that moment each day enough. But I also cannot stress enough that we need to be aware that we look externally where we need to look internally. And we need to find and create the tools to be able to do that safely. Please be mindful. Please be safe. Please be respectful, kind to yourself, and take your time with this stuff. I love you guys' comment and feedback. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Hope.